Hey guys, thanks for coming back to see us again. It is Saab Talk Live, the show by a couple of guys who love their Saabs, four guys who love their Saabs. Glad to have you. I am Lee Kelso.
And I'm Mark Romansher. Glad to see everyone here.
Yeah, we are tonight going to be focusing on, we labeled it the Saab you do not know, the 97X. We're interested in Saabs of all types, even when they're really kind of a crappy GM product that they foisted off onto Saabs, right, Mark?
Yeah. Now, there's an interesting story behind the NISO-NEX, and tonight we're here to learn more about it. And
Yeah, so if
also,
you guys go ahead.
I was going to say that we have a special guest tonight who is here going to tell us all about them. He's actually an owner and a gentleman who actually rebuilds them and works on them, so he can tell us a little more about some of the fine details of owning these vehicles.
Yeah, so see now I'm Mr. Critic on this one. This is a Chevy Trailblazer in Saab clothes, and to me, this is just an example of how Saab was just murdered by GM. But our guest tonight is going to tell us that I'm wrong, right, Mark?
That's right. His name is Saunders Lee. He's here, who owns 18 Saabs in his entire fleet, and 5 of those are the 97X, and 2 out of that collection there are the rare Saab 97X Aero that features a 400 horsepower engine borrowed from the Corvette.
So Saunders, welcome to the broadcast. Glad to have you here. So I'm wrong about the 97X. It's not a GM piece of crap in a new package.
First, good evening, Lee. Good evening, Mark. Good to see you guys. Yes, my opinion on that vehicle, yes, it's badge engineered. They were minimal modifications to make it what it is, but those modifications were significant.
Oh, so we're going to talk about that in a little bit greater detail, but let's show people exactly what we're talking about here. So here are a couple of your 97Xs, and how many of these things do you have?
Currently, I have 5 in the fleet. Technically 6, but the guy's paying it off. I'm letting him make payments. So truthfully, it's 5.
And here's 2 of them. What are their age ranges?
One of them is a, I'm trying to wait for the picture to come up. You're probably talking about the 2. One's a 05 and the other one's a 06. And one's a 5.3 and the other one is a 4.2, which is the 6-cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so, my specialty is I look for them sick because unlike you guys, I'm not rich. I have to ball on a budget. So yeah. I find them sick. I nurse them back to health. I play with them, and then I eventually sell them, that type of thing.
Oh, well, so your heart's in the right place. That's great. So let me show you this. This caught my attention. So, I'm out doing some research, and I come to Car and Driver Magazine's review of the 97. And they say it's an unconvincing and overpriced badge job of the Chevy Trailblazer. Despite Saab cues, the interior is cheap and the underlying SUV has noticeable chassis flex and feels clumsy. But Saab's revised suspension calms XX body's motions, and quicker steering ratio helps on-center feel. And then the 390 horsepower 6-liter V8 in the Aero should appeal to the fans of power. So, are they on target here, Saunders, or is that misleading?
They're fairly close. It's the most expensive of the models of the GMT, which is there were 6 platforms, 6 makes on that platform: Chevy Trailblazer, GMC Envoy, Olds Bravada, Buick Rainier, and the Isuzu Ascender, and of course 97X. It's by far the best looking. It has a lot of features that a lot of the others don't. The biggest thing is the handling. Bob Lutz, who a lot of people should be familiar with from, he used to run Saab back in the day. He said that should have been the suspension that all of them had, not just Saab. And if you'll go back and some of the things that turned me on to it was if you'll Motor Week, they did a review on it. And I just bumped into it when I was scrolling through YouTube, and they had a very positive review on it. And then a gentleman named Craig Bowe on his Saabs of America site on YouTube, he did a review showing the different levels, which is linear, arc, and of course the arrow. And but by then I'd already had my first Saab. But watching his video really helped me to understand them a lot more. But by then I was already smitten.
Speaking of that, you said you were smitten with Saab. Being that you're a 97X owner and you own many other Saabs, how did you get addicted to Saabs in the first place, Saunders?
I'm a weird dude. I've always liked, I gotta tell you, I've always liked or gone after what everyone else didn't. And so growing up in Oklahoma, it was pretty much Saab. I mean, excuse me, not Saab, Chevy, Dodge, and Ford. You know, that's all you saw everywhere. And, you know, thankfully being a service brat, I would go out to tinker and I would see these guys out there. They had like little TR7s. And then I came across my first bullnose Saab and I'm like, what in the world is with this thing, you know? And it just intrigued me. And so, and then I saw a 99 turbo and it was over. I'm like, these things, there's something going on with this company. And I've been hooked ever since, especially after I drove my first one.
That's awesome, Saunders. Also, I remember you telling us about a story a little while ago about one of your first experiences with a Saab where you transported a friend of yours and he had another vehicle and somehow his luggage didn't fit. You're on the way to the airport. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Yeah, actually, I was going to take the commander. I was going to take his, they'd had a baby. And so I was going to take him, the wife, the baby, all of their luggage and the stroller and all that stuff. I was going to take them to the airport, which is in Dallas. And we were stationed in Wichita Falls, like about 3 hours away. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, I could take you out there, no problem. And I show up in my Oldsmobile Cutlass. And I'm like, I can't get all that stuff in my car. Ain't no way. And he's looking at me for a second with this weird look. And then he goes, okay, we're going to take my car, but don't be joyriding in my car. And when you get done, just take it right back to the house. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, you know. And he opens the garage up, and unbeknownst to me, he had a 92, I mean, not 92, he had a 82 900 turbo. And I was just like, oh my God, you know, I was just like, just lost my mind. And then I loved it so much that when I picked them up from the airport, I picked them up in my Saab turbo.
You were hooked at that point, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So you've got 18 Saabs now, other than the 95s. What's in your fleet?
There's a lot. Okay. Oh my gosh. There's 5 C900s. Only one's an automatic. The rest are all 5 speeds. Let's see. There's 2 big and convertibles. There's 5 97Xs. There's 3 95 Aero wagons. I'm leaving some stuff out. Forgive me, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Well, and I noticed this is, I like how you use your 97X. Let's pull this up. That's the right way to Saab towing a Saab. I mean, what's better than that?
Yes, exactly. So the first one I picked it up. I was up visiting a dear friend of mine up in Oregon. And, you know, we were going down the street and I spotted it in a tow lot. I mean, not in a tow lot, in a used car lot. And the funny thing was I had just left Gary Saab. I always have to stop and see what they have. And I was just going by and I spotted it in like the 5th it was like on the back row of this used car lot covered with dust. And I, you know, so I whipped around and went in and saw it. And I said, what's the deal? And the problem was the encoder motor, which can be a fairly common problem with them. And that's one of the things that makes the Saab unique versus the other platform. It's the only one that has automatic 4-wheel drive. So when the rear wheels start to spin, the fronts automatically kick in because of this encoder motor. The other 5 platforms, you have to manually put it in 4-wheel drive. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so that piece was bad. And they misdiagnosed it. They were told it needed a new transfer case and transmission. So he dumped it. I got it for, it was like less than $1,000. Went home, started doing my homework. You know, thank you all you guys who post videos and all the guys who post online. You know, it's really appreciated and it's really needed in our community to keep us together. And I read up and it was, oh yeah, encoder motor. Yanked it out, boom, that did the trick. So I got this really nice vehicle with only 100,000 miles. Beautiful 97X with a 6-cylinder. A lot of people snub the 6-cylinder. It's a very capable vehicle. And I put 110 trouble-free miles on it. And a lot of those miles were towing other Saabs, including 97Xs.
So a
Yeah.
9.7 towing a 9.7, that's great. So Kelly is asking, are they running? And clearly he labeled that as a joke, but you do use these trucks a lot, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I use them
Are all
all.
5 of them running?
Two of the 9.7Xs do not run. I bought them both from the same.
Oh, we just lost
Oh,
Saunders.
goodness.
He'll jump back in a little bit. But one of the things about this particular model that they produced, I think he's
Mhm.
coming back in. Here he comes. Let's get him back online. There he
Oh,
is.
there we go.
We got you back.
Okay, sorry about that.
No
I'm in
problem.
a very rural area with poor internet. I'm sorry, but the 5.3s are notorious for the DOD issues, and one had that, and then so she bought a 6-cylinder, and somehow or another she messed up the motor in that one. So I bought them both, and boom, there you go.
So
Awesome.
what does this
The others
DOD
run.
do?
Say again.
What is DOD, displacement on demand? Is that where they shut off cylinders to save
Yes,
fuel? Is
it
that how that works?
deactivates cylinders. Yeah, deactivate cylinders when there's not a heavy load on the engine.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. Now,
Yeah.
this 5 point this DoD feature, was this only in the 5.3 motor that came in the 9.7X ARC? Is that correct?
Correct. That was only with the 5.3 motor. These are all LS based motors, the GM motor, and a lot of them tended to have issues with the lifters. But the good thing about don't let that ever scare you off with that motor. It's a very, very easy motor to rebuild. A lot of people simply disable the feature, which is kind of like a Band-Aid, but you can easily just yank the heads off, swap the cam, put in the new lifters, and that thing will be bulletproof for a long, long, long time.
Awesome.
So we're looking
Yeah.
here at, I'm pretty sure this is the 300 horsepower out of the 6-liter, correct? This is the Corvette engine?
Yeah. So forgive me, I can't see pictures of what you're posting up. So
Okay.
is that the one with just the engine sitting by itself?
No, it just says the GM Performance Division. So I'm assuming that's the
Oh,
6.
okay. Yeah. So that's actually the 6.0,
Yeah.
which is the LS2 Corvette motor. And that's only for the Aero.
And that is, I think, isn't that the most powerful engine that GM had put in any one of their 4-wheel drive vehicles up to that point?
At the time, correct. Yes, at the time, correct. And also I need to say the Chevy Trailblazer SS also has that same drivetrain.
Okay. That's what I'd read.
Yeah.
So can you feel the difference in the modifications that Saab made in putting these things together?
Oh yes. And funny thing is my niece has a Trailblazer and a good friend of mine, she has an Envoy, and I've driven them both. And I'm like, oh, these are actually pretty decent, for the price and what you get. I'm like, these are pretty nice. And then when I drove mine, I had only driven it on a few surface streets. I hadn't driven it much. When I first bought it, I bought it in Portland, and then I drove directly to Seaside. And I didn't think much about it while I was driving it. I was just enjoying the fact that, wow, I got a Saab 9.7X, I got a Saab truck, And I'm sorry, I get stupid like that. I love my Saabs. And so, but when we got out to Seaside, my niece was there, and I had her blocked in. She had to run to the store, and I said, "Here, just take mine." And she came back. She's like, "Oh my God, that thing drives so sweet." I'm like, "What do you mean? It's the same engine as yours?" She goes, "No, when you go around the corners, it doesn't do all of this." Mine had 110,000 on it. Hers only had 80,000 on it. She goes, "It feels so much better."
Wow.
And she goes, not to mention it looks a lot better too, which is true. It's by far the best looking one. And one of the things I like about them is even though they're they're like years old now. They're some of them are, they're over 10 years old. They still look contemporary. And another feature that I like, and I think people should rescue more of them or keep more of them. All of the new little cute utes and baby SUVs, some of them get better gas mileage, all that type of things. But these are actually on a truck chassis or a truck frame. So these things can tow. I think the 4-cylinders tow 5,500 pounds. The 5.3 and the 6.0, they're 6,500 tow rating. That's pretty darn respectable. None of
That's
these
awesome.
new SUVs, they're all unibody chassis. They're not rated to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, you know,
Yeah,
you said you buy them.
yeah,
You said you buy them wounded, and this one looks pretty wounded. Tell me the story on this.
yeah. Yes. Okay. So I've always wanted, all of us who are in the Saabs, of course, depending on what we have, if it's a 9,000, we want a 9,000 Aero. If it's a 900, we want an SPG.
Right.
And so same thing, if you got a 9.7, you want the Aero, plain and simple. And I wanted one, and I almost, plopped down about 8 grand on one that needed a lot of work. And I said, nah, I'm not going to do it because I'm cheap. So anyway, um, and I was driving, and I was like, it's true. I'm sorry. And so I was like, I said, let me look online. Let's see what they got on, what they have on Copart. And I'll be darned, the same day they had 3
Hmm.
Arrows
3.
up for
That's awesome.
sale. Were wrecked in the right front like that one. And the third one had a little bit more damage. It was in Chicago. One was in Dallas, and the other one was in Phoenix. And I got the Dallas one, and I got the Phoenix one. And like I said, I was about to pay 8,000 for one that needed a lot of work. It had been abused. And I got both of these cars. I bought them running and driving, just the wreck damage. And so I had the one towed to the house in Oklahoma. They only charged me $200 to tow it up there. That was a blessing. And so out the door with that one, all total, I was in it for 2,500. That's not including, I had to run to the boneyard and get a fender, bumper cover, the headlight, and then the little bucket behind it supports it. That's all I needed to get it
Oh, wow.
back up and going. And then, and then the one in Phoenix, I went and picked that one up at the yard there. And that was a great day because my buddy John, who lives in Utah, I rode down with him in his truck, and we went down there to fix the water pump on his son's 9.3 SS. And then we were going to tow the 9.7X back. And while we were there, Tom Donnie came by. And
No joke.
and yeah, so because his son lives there in the same area. So I called up Tom, and Tom came by and spent some time with us. He was like, if you want to sell that thing, let me know. And it's funny him saying that, because when I was up at the museum, that's another place, if you've never been, you have to go to the museum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at the museum, that's when I saw my first 9.7X up close and personal. And I'm like, wow, this thing, it was, of course, if it's in this museum, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, and then that whet my appetite more. But, again, being cheap, it's out of my budget. And, but I would talk to another gentleman, another good friend of mine, Robert Grexler, who's up in New York. He would just be telling me about how nice his was. And it's currently down because he's doing some monster stuff to his, from the performance standpoint. But it just whet my appetite, and I'm like, I got to have the best of the best. And I got lucky and ended up getting 2 the same day. And I only missed the third one because I lost my signal. And when the signal came back, the auction was already done. I'm like, oh! So I have the other one, but it's going to my best friend. He's like, he has a white one that he's selling. And then when he sells the white one, he's just going to buy the Arrow from me. He's another longtime Saab guy like myself.
So,
Mhm.
Mark,
Yeah.
you've done some shopping on these online. They're out there for sale, right? You can find them. What kind of prices were you seeing?
Okay, so I did a search on some of the regular car sites, Car Gurus, dabbled on eBay a little bit. So if
Mhm.
you're going to look at something that's on like a retail site like Car Gurus, I was seeing them anywhere between about like 5,000 all the way up to 10,000, depending on what condition, miles, and stuff like that. So that would be like retail from a dealership type environment. Yes, you can go out and get examples that are well kept and so forth in a retail environment. I guess what Saunders was doing is chasing after the Copart and the wrecked ones and bring them back, which is much more honorable and noble, I think. But that's just my opinion.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
But yes, they are out there. So you could still go do searches for these vehicles on retail websites, and still find them. They are getting fewer and far in between, but they're still prevalent out there. I think the 97X is pretty well out there just because it's a GM platform and it's still rather popular to work on these vehicles, especially what Saunders was telling me before. The parts on these things are cheap. It's it is
Yeah.
GM parts, the GM engine. So you can go get a water pump for 40, $50, or you can go get some gaskets and stuff like that for not too bad. So the parts are pretty cheap. So these vehicles, they're SUVs, they're on a truck chassis, they can tow, they're cheap to maintain. Parts are not hard to find. They're what, 2006, 2005 to 2009. So property taxes aren't going to be that bad on them because,
there you
stuff
go.
like that. So there's a lot of factors that are positives for this platform. Even though people like to bash any GM crossover Saab thing, it's like, oh no, GM kills everything. But still, yes, we have the Saab purists and we have the Saab modernists and whatever Saab analogy you want to make to the other people out there. But the point is that this platform has a lot of positives, and it's still worth it for its utilitarian purposes alone. I mean,
there you go.
can you imagine, taking one of those more modern SUVs and putting 20 bags of mulch in the back and putting the seats down or hauling stuff with that, or hooking up a trailer and hauling things around? Sure, but this thing's built a little more stout and it handles better. Man, all the positives are there, at least for us car guys, because Saab car guys, we know what to look for.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
they are the best look. I mean, I think they are very attractive. I like the exterior, and this interior I think is really pretty. That's pretty stand up. Stupid Saab cup holder notwithstanding, but
that's one of my pet peeves about the interior is the cup holder. But
wait, let me just go back here. You can't see this, Saunders, but I want to make sure everybody notices. They even put the ignition in the floor, right?
Right
there
in the center console.
Yeah,
right there.
Yes,
that's Saab. It's Saab DNA. even
exactly. Exactly, it's there.
I'd love to have been in the room when the engineers were told, "Okay, you're going to take the Trailblazer and we're going to make it a Saab." Can you imagine what those Saab engineers must have been thinking? Because these were built in Moraine, Ohio, I think, right? Weren't they built right there on the plant? Yeah, they were. Yeah,
absolutely. So, if you could imagine the conversations engineers had, it's like they would have had to have, I don't know, talked about, oh man, what don't we have to fix on this thing? I bet they're probably thinking, oh man, the quality of this thing, the so and so forth. I mean, goodness, I can only imagine what the Saab engineers were going through. But it appears they did it. They made the changes that made this a better platform than all of the other 97Xs, man. They did.
Yeah. And we're looking at your white one here, Saunders.
Yes.
We lost you there for a second. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, we're looking at your white Saab 97X now, Saunders, and it looks a little beat up in the fender, but looks like it's a pretty whole otherwise. Is that one on the road too?
Yes, and actually it runs, but it runs poorly. And you'll see there's I sent you a picture of a V8 motor that I snagged from another Saab that was wrecked in the boneyard. There was one that was rolled. So I got the motor out of that one to put in that one. That one runs, but it just runs poorly. So we're going to swap the motor. And and then we already have another white bumper cover for it. And and again, that's a 5.3. And I towed that thing from Utah back to the house in Vegas using the 4.2 6-cylinder, and it pulled it like it wasn't even there.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah. Hey, we've got somebody, Rick Brooks, asking, did they sell a lot of the 97s in Sweden? And I don't know the answer to that. Mark, did you look into that at all?
I haven't seen the information on that yet. I can only imagine that if they did, it would be rare, because I don't hear of American vehicles being exported too often unless they're specifically sought after. But the 97X, I'm just not sure. Go ahead, Saunders.
Actually, our American vehicles are actually very sought after over there. And I've seen quite a few. Yeah, and I've seen quite a few posts in the 97 board, as well as on. I saw them a couple other places of Swedes, and one guy over in Finland had one. He was asking questions on making modifications and such. And then if you look at the 97X board, there's actually a couple of 97X forums that I'm on, on Facebook, and some of these guys have made some very, very nice modifications to their vehicles to make them way more off-road capable than they were intended to. I think they were kind of like most Range Rovers. They have the capability, but most of them will never go off-road, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of guys that Mo lives over in Nashville. He's got a 9.7. I spotted his 9.7X, and it was all lifted and sweet sounding. And I'm like, dude, I know he's probably like, who is this nut running up to me, wanting to ask questions about my truck, But a lot of guys have really taken them to another level as far as off-road capability, and taking off-road and taking them out camping and going to some really rugged areas.
Well, it looks to me like you had a lot of
Can you
fun
hear
with this one. What's the story on this thing? All the front end covered in snow. Was this?
Oh yeah.
On that one, I was actually on my way to Detroit, which is where my son lives, and I had just left the U.S. Air Force Museum, which is in Dayton, and I just got caught up in a storm and came outside, and I was just like just covered with ice and stuff on the front.
Did you guys see this post? JX Poe just posted. It looks like there were 5 European sales in 2005, 513 in 206. So look at that. They've got less than 1,000 of these sold in Europe. So you're right. That's a pretty rare thing.
Yeah.
I can imagine there'd be some guys over there pretty hungry to get their hands on it.
One thing I wanted to bring up. I was thinking about this. You know how we talk about importing all the nice Saab things from Sweden, and all the German guys are like, oh, we're going to build our BMW and import all the car parts from Germany. Think about it like this. If this was a GM platform, I can only imagine that there's guys in Sweden importing like performance cams and engine parts from the U.S. to bring over there to modify their engines. I just thought that'd be cool.
Well, Saunders, we just try to keep these things to about half an hour, and we're about there, so I want to wrap things up.
Oh, goodness, time flies.
Tell us about, it does, doesn't it? So what's your next big project with any one of these cars?
Well, I promised myself I wasn't going to go crazy with the Aero. My thing is, I just love, I love the Mark. I've been smitten since '82. Just whenever I come across them, I try to catch them before I know they're going to go to the boneyard so that they get saved. That's my thing. They're such good vehicles. A lot of people, I've sold so many unintentionally. I bought these cars to keep them, fix them, have fun with them. And a friend would drive them, and they're like, "Oh my God, this thing's amazing!" And they're like, 4 or 5. Why don't you? Let me buy that one. And now I've got friends who. A good friend of mine, as a matter of fact, he's like, Chevy guy, diehard. He just got his first 9.7,
A convert,
and he loves
him on board. That's good.
That's awesome.
I try. So if it has something to do with Saab or airplanes, I'm all in.
Nice.
That's
like
great.
the shirt, Saunders. Like the shirt.
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite plane. That's SR-70.
Oh, the Blackbird.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
The only airplane that was built to leak on the ground.
Yeah,
kind of like my Saab, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Well, but when this one heats up, it seals itself. And
that's right.
Matter of fact, here's an interesting story because Saabs came from aircraft. There's a neat story about one time one of these guys was in distress off the coast of Russia, coming back toward Norwegian countries, and a couple of Saab, were they Gripens? Not Gripens, those two Vigans. Some Saab Vigans intervened to escort them back, and they purposely kept staying in between the SR-71 and the Russian plane to keep them from being able to shoot them down. There's a really neat story on that. Those guys finally got recognized last year for that, and it happened decades ago.
Oh wow!
But,
What a great
yeah.
story.
Yeah,
well, buddy, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. There's others who may be more knowledgeable about this than me. Lastly, quickly, I urge everybody to look at Chris. Sons of America, and he breaks down the 3 models. So it'll give you some ideas to what's it's way video. So you can digest it a little easier.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time, Saunders. Thanks for joining us. I'd love to have you back to share some more stories. You've got 1 million of them in your pocket, and we only touched a few on the surface.
Many of them.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Pleasure having you, Saunders.
Be glad to be back anytime. Thanks for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you, Bet. And thanks to Kelly for doing a little bit of research for us there. 85, almost 86,000 97s manufactured before they went out of production when they shut down that plant in Ohio. So now we know a little more about the Saab that nobody knows. Mark, I'm glad to see you again. Let's connect and we'll figure out what we're doing next week. Hope you have a great week.
Awesome. Everyone have a great time. Great week.
All right. We'll see you next week, guys.